Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World and Financial Juneteenth. I'm a finance professor. That's what I do. I've been teaching finance for about 20 years. I got my PhD in finance. And so I pay very close attention to black wealth, how black wealth is growing or not growing, some of the good and bad decisions that we make when it comes to money. I couldn't help but to take a second to comment on something that I just read on Financial Juneteenth by one of our bloggers. Basically, from what I understand, there are black women in Detroit and other parts of the country who are now going into debt in order to pay for their hair weaves. In case you aren't aware, I learned a little bit about hair weaves recently, a lot more, because my daughter is big on hair, makeup, fashion, beauty, all that stuff. And I did my research in this industry, and a couple things I figured out are that one, black women spend a lot of money on hair. I mean, I'm absolutely astonished by how much money they spend on hair and how much money black women spend at church. Now, I'm not here to criticize any of those decisions. Where you put your money is where you put your money. I just encourage you to get a good return on your investment. The thing about a weave that's so interesting to me is that it's almost as if sometimes as black women there is so much pressure to look a certain way, and not as much energy put into making sure you're feeling a certain way, that you're feeling as good about yourself as you're actually looking, sort of building yourself as much internally as you might be externally. And I really believe a lot of this does come from these reality shows that tend to emphasize the superficial over the internal, intrinsic, the spiritual development, intellectual development, all that good stuff. In fact, when I went to my brother's wedding this week in Costa Rica, I was given the toast as the best man. My brother picked me as his best man. I was shocked. I didn't think he would do that, but I was so happy he did. And one of the things I mentioned in my best man toast was I said, when I asked my brother, what makes you want to spend the rest of your life with this woman as opposed to another woman that you could have dated, right? My brother, he's the man. The ladies like him. They don't like me as much as they like him. But so I was kind of like, oh wow, so this woman must be pretty special. And the first thing he said was, he said, you know what? She's just a pleasant person. She's a really pleasant person. And he described her, and most of what he described was more about who she was as a person, who she was internally, her spirit, having good conversations, intelligent discussions, progressive thought, thinking about building and growing and making good decisions in terms of education and economics and all of that stuff. And he felt like this was a partner that he could build with, that he could grow with. And he didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about the size of her booty, or the fact that maybe she had a master's degree or two, or that she had a nice house or a nice car, or all these superficial things that we're taught to believe really matter when it comes to picking a partner. He was talking about the fact that she was a pleasant person, and I don't think it's a coincidence that she also, I think she has natural hair, maybe not. I don't know that part. I can't tell the difference between what's natural and what's not. And even if she did wear a weave every now and then, I think it seems like everybody wears weaves now. I thought about getting one so I could do the Al Sharpton look, but I went with the bald head instead. I'm kidding. You ain't never gonna see. If you see me wearing a weave, you need to come up and just smack me in the face, because it's clearly when I've lost my mind. But anyway, my point here is this. I think that when you talk about debt, there is a difference between good debt and bad debt. Good debt is debt where you invested in something and you get a return on your investment. It doesn't always have to be financial, but it should be something that's going to help you build your wealth over time. There is bad debt where you are borrowing money to go on vacation, to take people to dinner, borrow money for entertainment, just things that are not really going to give you value, but they're going to give you a whole lot of debt that you're having to deal with. And the problem with debt is that if you're not careful with it, it can lead you into economic slavery. Slavery is not where you're not being paid. Slavery is where you have no options. So, the idea that black women are borrowing money and going into debt in order to pay for a weave, I wasn't sure how I really felt about that. I'm not going to say clearly that it's always a horrible idea, but I can say pretty clearly that it's almost always a horrible idea. And the other thing that's interesting to me too, in terms of how much money black women spend on hair-related stuff, is I heard a story from a woman recently that really affected me, and she said, I realized that I was giving so much of my money away to the hair salon, and most of these salons are owned by people who are not black. Not the salons, I'm sorry, the hair care product distributors, the people that sell the hair, and then some of the salons too are owned by people who are not black, Koreans and things like that. And she said, I realized I was giving away $400 a month trying to do hair-related stuff. And she said, I didn't even make that much money, and I wanted to build wealth, and I knew that my hair habit was going to keep me from building my wealth. So you know what she did? she cut her hair. She said, I shaved it off. I said, you shaved it off? She said, well, pretty much. It was really, really short. And I basically took that money I was going to spend on hair and I put it toward buying my first property. And she did this at the age of 27. By the time she was 36, 37, her property that she owned had so much value that in New York City she's able to rent out the parking space for $1,000 a month. Just the parking space she rents out for a G a month. That doesn't even count all the thousands in rent that she's getting from the units that she's renting out. So now, if she doesn't want to work for the rest of her life, she doesn't have to. And it's because she made that temporary sacrifice. So what I would just say is, I don't know if necessarily taking on debt in order to get a hair weave is a good idea. But again, I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm just saying be thoughtful about why you take on debt and what that debt kind of does to you. Because this society is designed and is hell-bent on making you a financial slave to the point where you're going to have to work your butt off for the rest of your life just so you can pay people back because you borrow money from them to buy a bunch of things that you don't need because they know how to pick your brain, they know how to hotwire it like a car, they know how to get you to make impulsive purchases such that you're going to make the decision without thinking about it. They appeal to your instinctual brain, not your logical thinking brain, which is more so in the front, the prefrontal cortex. I think that's what they call it. So anyway, that's all I just wanted to really say. I want to say to you real quick. If you want more information about this kind of stuff, go check out financialjuneteenth.com. And also, we're about to launch Financial Juneteenth University, which you can find at financialjuneteenthuniversity.com. And that's where I talk about all kinds of stuff like this all the time. I get together with a bunch of financial experts, and we basically teach financial literacy, wealth building, entrepreneurship to those who want to learn it, because wealth building is the next step in the liberation of black people. It's the next big civil rights movement, next to fighting mass incarceration. So those are two things I've dedicated my life to. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. Please take care. God bless. I'm gone. Peace.